Hey everybody, yesterday I talked about annuals and how they arrive to us and all the steps we have to take to get them ready to have them for customers. Well, today I'm switching gears and talking specifically about perennials, and those are a completely different beast. One of the most interesting ways that perennials come to us are as bare root plants. Now, a bare root plant, the name kind of gives it away, it is a dormant plant that basically has exposed roots. There's no soil packed with these. Now they do arrive usually in a box that has either like sawdust or paper or rice hulls, something that controls moisture, because if the roots get too wet, they can rot. If they get too dry, they dry out and wither. Either way, you don't end up with a viable plant. So we want to make sure that they come to us in exactly the perfect condition. And the big advantage with bare root perennials is that it allows us to get bigger plants for basically a lower price, because we can ship basically 25 plants in a little box. We're not shipping soil, we're not shipping pots. It's very efficient, and once the plants get into their soil and kind of get their happy place, they start growing very, very quickly, and over the course of the season, they basically get to the same size as they would if they had been in a regular pot or out in the garden or out in the yard. So it's quite incredible that these kind of dry roots or semi-dry roots can kind of grow as if they were in a pot. They just go through that little stasis period where they're completely dormant, and when they wake up, they don't even realize that they had been dirtless for so long. I'm not all that familiar with how bare root plants are prepared for shipping, but I do know that they harvest them at a very specific time and they keep them in a climate-controlled environment. That means the humidity and the temperature are just perfect to keep those plants dormant until it's time for shipping. Then when they're shipped, they put them in, the sawdust or the rice hulls or the paper or whatever kind of material they're using, put them in a box and send them to us. One of the most underappreciated aspects of planting up perennials is choosing the right pot size, because if we put it in too small of a pot, that plant's going to quickly outgrow the pot, and we're either going to have to pot it again into a bigger pot, or that plant's going to suffer. And either way, that's extra work or damage that we really don't want to happen. If we put it in too big of a pot, number one, the plant might look skimpy in that size, and we'll be basically selling a customer a pot with more soil, more container, and something that took up more bench space than it needed to, and ends up being more expensive than it should have. So choosing the right pot is critical. Not all of our perennials arrive as bare root. We do get some in trays. Now the trays are much bigger than those little finger and thumb size trays that I showed you yesterday. No, these are kind of more 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch size trays, and those, again, we pick the right size pot, plant them up, and they take off from there. Now sometimes those plants will either come to us completely dormant, but oftentimes they may have already started leafing out, especially if we have a plant like Heucheras or some of the earlier blooming plants. Those will oftentimes have leaves on them. Now with these perennials, some of them will be ready for sale in May, some are going to be ready for sale at the end of the season, and still others won't be available until next year. So it kind of depends on the plant and the size that it comes in and the conditions that we keep it in. So some plants we have a very long commitment with, and other ones not so long. So it's just an interesting process to see how each plant behaves differently and requires kind of different decisions on our part. So sometimes there'll be certain plants, especially one that takes a really long time for us to have it ready for sale. We may not buy those in such small sizes. We'll wait and get them as a bigger finished plant already in the pots and that type of thing. But there are going to be some varieties that won't be available as finished plants to us, or they're going to be very, very expensive. So a lot of times that's the time when we decide, okay, we are going to invest in the small plants and put the time in, and that way we're going to have colors and varieties that basically no one else has or very few places have. Let me take you on a little tour of some of the plants, because it's interesting to see how some of them are emerging and what they look like and how they're behaving. These are Baptisia from the Decadence series, and you can see this one here. Look at the number of growth nodes on there. All those are going to be branches. I'm really curious about this specific one, Decadence Vanilla Cream, because all of the plants have this enormous number of branches or new kind of growth nodes coming out of there. When you compare it to some of the other varieties, which don't have quite as many, I think that one must be maybe more of a mounding one, where these are maybe more upright. I'm not real sure. I have to kind of look that up. But you can see the difference. These still have a lot of growth nodes, and these still are going to be fantastic plants. But these, I'm just so curious to see what happens with those. Here's a new Echinacea from Proven Winners, It's called ColorCoded. The Fuchsia is Bright, and they've gotten kind of clever with all the names of the Echinacea in this series. And you can see this one came in as more of a plug in a tray, and it's already leafing out, so we're hoping to see some good growth on this season, and so it's off to a really good start. This is Salvia. It's Fashionista Evening Attire, and it's just starting to emerge. Salvia is one of those we have to be a little careful with, because if we don't put it in a big enough pot, we're going to be doing a lot of transplanting later, because these will fill a pot pretty quickly every season. Here's a trio of semi-evergreen varieties. So here's some Brunnera. That's the one the deer don't like. That one is called Queen of Hearts. This one here is Bergenia, has those nice kind of waxy, rubbery leaves. The variety is called Fairytale Romance, gets a nice pink flower on it. And then this is Anemone, sorry, having a hard time saying that word today. I think it's called Honorine Jobert, not sure how it's pronounced, but this one will have white flowers on it as well. These are all Heucheras, and you can see they're also semi-evergreen, so even when the snow melts, they'll end up showing their color. This one here is called Black Forest Cake, has a nice rich leaf. This one here is Paris, has the nice kind of silvery green leaf, beautiful red or pinkish flower rather on that one. That's one of our best sellers. And then over here is another bestseller and favorite. It is Forever Red, has these beautiful red leaves. They actually get even more red as the season progresses. Thank you very much for watching. Now, if you want to learn the process for annuals, which is quite a bit different, I will include a link for that. And hey, I'll see you in the next video.